Right, it's time for the weekly art showcase. This is a little bit late because I wasn't very well a couple of days, and I'm just going to stick to the two. And we've moved on to the jungle biome animals now. So we'll start with the apex. I do apologise for the lighting, but I'm again in a different room today. And this is the jungle apex. So this is the largest animal in the jungle, and it disguises its head primarily as a giant flower. Now the flower can be a very different colour to what I've chosen, but I thought I'd go with pink and red because it's quite striking. And the animal also has what looks like leaves down its neck, but it's just elongated fur or elongated scales. Because this is a really strange animal. It's not exactly a mammal or a reptile. It's some kind of mashup between the two. So yeah, it's got these long claws that it means it has to walk on its knuckles, a bit like a gorilla. It has these really big feet, really long claws again, and just this tuft on the end of the tail. So now they're not spikes running down its back; they are like elongated vines. It's to add to the disguise of being a plant rather than an animal. And then the flower folds back and have inside the actual animal's true nature, which is just like a black monster and a very long tongue to snatch small animals up, a bit like a frog, and it can use that tongue whilst the flower is closed, but if the animal is medium to large, it needs to retract the flower back in order to open its mouth all the way. So yeah, that's the apex. Now primarily it's an ambush based one, so it lurks, makes itself look like a flower and then strikes, but it is actually quite fast as well with the way it moves with its knuckles and stuff, and it's a very powerful animal. Now we're on to the larger jungle animals. So that apex is about the size of a grizzly bear. It can be a little bit larger, which actually makes it fairly small if you think about it. But the apexes for the biomes are relatively small compared to the one that's found all over the place. You know, the one that looked like a Spinosaurus. Now these are two larger animals. These ones are different sizes, even though they look about the same size to each other. This dinosaur-looking herbivore is about the size of a cow. They're primarily just grazing, and they're very harmless until they stampede. And they, like a Corythosaurus or an iguanodon, can walk as a biped and as a quadruped. So they're generally harmless. They're very friendly. They don't bat an eyelid really at any of the natives. They just run at the sight of big teeth and big claws. So unfortunately these guys, they're easily killed by like the native, the Feles and the Junimaru that later take place of them, because they're so placid. Now these guys, they're a carnivore. They look very mean, and they are about the size of a generic pterosaur, so they're quite large. They have these large claws to grab prey, and it has a spiky back as protection. But what really sets it apart is its jaw. The bottom jaw splits open, so that allows it to consume things that are very, very large. It behaves a lot like a snake in that its jaw is split. It looks fused together until it needs to swallow something that's large. So in theory, this guy could eat a slightly smaller version of this in one go, but they wouldn't obviously be able to fly because then they'd be too heavy. But these guys have almost insatiable appetites because they generally eat the smaller animals and even the fellas and Junimari when it comes to them, rather than these bigger ones. They might eat the babies on a regular basis, but they won't really eat the big guys because, again, they'd be grounded and then they'd be eaten by the apex. So, but these are much larger animals. Now, as a bonus, I'm going to add the last animals of this biome, and then I will move on to the actual plants next week. So these are the smaller jungle animals. Now, there are obviously a lot more animals in these biomes. These are just ones that appear the most common, like these duck-like birds. And you've got a little female here with no real crest and no green down the throat. And then male with a big crest. That's a bit like a cockatoo, and there's green down his breast. And they, the little animals are a little bit less impressive, but they do serve their purposes. I mean, it's like this guy here. His name literally just translates to sticky thing, and insects will stick all over him, and he'll eat them with his long tongue. He'll just slap his tongue back and scrape them off and eat them. And now he's about the size of a normal, like, I don't really want to say alligator because they can get quite large. More like, I think it's a caiman. So that he's still quite large, but not massive compared to a large animal. But they generally stick to trees. They don't really go on the ground, and he just eats insects. Now, the fast baby here, the Wu, he is extremely fast. He has no arms at all. It might look like, oh, maybe he's got some tiny, tiny T-Rex arms hidden in there. No, he's got none at all. He's actually just got mainly legs. He didn't skip leg day. He's a runner. He's really, really fast. If he sees a predator, he'll be gone instantly. It's like insanely fast. And they are about the size of a turkey. So, again, not massively big, but not super small. That is the full size they can get, though, is the size of a turkey, so they can be a lot smaller if they're juveniles or babies. And the duck ones, as you can assume, they'll be about the size of a duck, a mallard. Now, this thing is very odd looking, and it's very odd in nature. They are like a monkey. They're about the size of I think they're called a macaque monkey, but they can be a little bit larger, and they just scream a lot, and there's no real reason for it. They don't communicate through vocalization to scare enemies away. They just scream. They're like for no reason at all. But they are vermin as well, because they will go and steal resources like food and water and even clothing just to play with it. And they're really just vermin and pests, and they get exterminated a lot. Then they're not found common in settlement areas, unlike the other ones. These ones can be found in settlements or around settlements, whereas these ones, they're usually driven out or just flat out exterminated. So yeah, that's going to do for this week's little art showcase. They were all again done with those touch mark pens on the manga paper, and I will move on to the little plants one next week. Now, because there are more images on the plants one, I will only do the one image, and maybe if I've got time, I'll move on to an animal for the next biome. But until then, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next week.